Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the History Cloak channel. I'm Mr. McGee. This is the first episode in our Israel-Hamas series. We are going to be taking a look at the creation of the modern state of Israel. How was it created? What happened to the land before the creation of the modern state of Israel? And what was the process of the creation of the modern state of Israel? We need to know all of those things to better understand the issues that are happening today. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Well, the first thing we need to do is jump in our time machine and head back to the BC era. We need to take a look at what was happening in that land that is now Israel back in BC times. And what we would find is the ancient kingdom of Israel. So that's kind of the first thing that we need to establish. There was an ancient kingdom called Israel. Now, I've seen some stuff online where people are debating, well, that really wasn't the ancient homeland of Israel. Well, ladies and gentlemen, most scholars agree there was an ancient kingdom in that land, in that area called Israel. Not to mention, honestly, if you just picked up a Bible, you would be able to look and read passages like, "So David rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. The period that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years. Boom! All of a sudden, you look at the map of modern Israel, there's Hebron, and there's Jerusalem. Or, you could read passages like, "Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, to the city of David, which is also called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David." Boom! There you go. You look at the map of modern Israel, there's Bethlehem, and there's Galilee. The ancient kingdom of Israel is going to last until 70 AD. At this point in time, they're part of the Roman Empire. And you have to remember, the Roman Empire is vast. It covers a lot of territory. And like a lot of people who were part of the Roman Empire, Israel didn't really want to be part of the Roman Empire. And they've had a series of revolts in the past, and they revolt against the Roman Empire in 70 AD, and the Roman Empire, to make a long story short, they're done with it. And so they come in, they destroy the Second Temple in Israel, and they kill a lot of Jews. The Jews are going to try a second revolt in 132 AD. This is called the Shimon Bar Kokhba revolt. This is going to be an even worse disaster than 70 AD. The Romans are going to sweep through, they're going to destroy pretty much all of Israel and scatter all of the Jews. They are done. They don't want an Israel to exist. So, they scatter the Jews. They rename the land of Israel Syria Palestinia in order to basically remove any Jewish reference to that land. That's how done they were with the Jews at that time. It's also an insult to the Jews because Palestinia is a reference to the Philistines, who were the ancient enemy of Israel. With the defeat in 132 AD, the Jews are scattered. They're scattered across North Africa, and they're scattered throughout the Middle East. Now, after a couple of years, there will be Jews that come back to the area. So for most of the history of that land, there is a Jewish presence. About the only time there isn't a Jewish presence is in the first couple years after the Romans come through and just defeat them. So some Jews come back to the area, but most of the Jews end up living in the Middle East and in North Africa and migrating into Europe. Now you may be asking yourself, wow, this seems like a lot of random history maybe, or just some random facts. But we have to know, where do terms come from? And hopefully some of you guys caught Syria Palestinia. Well, why is that important? Because Palestine, that land, that territory, that's not an ethnicity. There is no ethnic group called Palestinians. Now, there are Palestinian Arabs. Arab is an ethnic group. There are Arabs that live in the territory called Palestine, but there are no Palestinians. There's no ancient kingdom of Palestine. That name Palestine comes from the Romans, and the entire point is to remove any connection of the Jews to that area. But it's not an ethnic group. Again, that's going to be important for us to remember. Now, in order to understand the modern state of Israel, we need to jump back into our time machine and head to another period of history. That period would be 622 AD. That would be Muhammad and his flight from the city of Mecca going to the city of Medina. Now, you may be thinking, wait, Mr. McGee, Muhammad? You mean the guy who founded the religion of Islam? Yes. Again, in order to understand what's going on with Israel today, we have to look at several different events. So, the Roman Empire, and now Muhammad and Islam. Now, you may be saying, wait a second. Islam? Muhammad, the guy who founded Islam? What does that have to do with the creation of Israel? Well, it has nothing to do with the creation of Israel, but if we want to understand what's going on, we need to understand Muhammad and Islam just for a couple seconds. And by a couple seconds, I mean a couple minutes. So here's what we need to know about Islam. Here's what's relevant for us in connecting all of this with the modern state of Israel. Muhammad's main battle, and I say battle in the debate sense, not physical battle. His main battle is with the polytheists that are in Mecca. So polytheists, those are people that worship multiple gods. Muhammad, at the beginning of his preaching of Islam, is very complimentary towards the Jews and the Christians. He sees them as fellow monotheists, and he wants them on his side. He wants them to confirm what he is saying is true. Now, when he goes to Medina in 622, the Jews, when he preaches to them about Islam, and says that actually they can find prophecies about him in their Tanakh. The Tanakh is a holy book in Judaism. It would also be called the Old Testament in Christianity. He tells the Jews and the Christians that they can find him preached about in their holy books. They look at their holy books and they say, no, this is not the case. We disagree with you, Muhammad. You are not preached about in our books, and therefore we won't follow you. Now, why is this relevant? Well, because when Muhammad gets to Medina, the complementariness, which is not a word, the complementariness that he has towards the Jews and the Christians disappears. And now he is antagonistic towards the Jews specifically. This is the part that will be relevant for us. He's antagonistic to the Jews, and he exiles a couple Jewish tribes from Arabia as he is conquering all of Arabia. He actually massacres the Quraysh tribe, which is another Jewish tribe, and he conquers a Jewish tribe at Khaybar, which is a very famous battle in Islam. But he conquers those Jews at Khaybar. Muhammad now views Jews and Christians as an enemy to be subjugated. And that leads to very famous verses like this. In Surah 98, verse 6 of the Quran, it reads, "Indeed, they who disbelieved among the people of the scripture," that would be the Jews and the Christians, "and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst of creatures." So according to the Quran, Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures along with the polytheists. So now it's not them all working together with Islam against the polytheists. They, Jews and Christians, and the polytheists are the worst of creatures. We also have to look at the Hadith. Now, the Quran and Islam are the words of Allah, but the Hadith are stories that are passed down about Muhammad. Now, the two Hadith that are considered the most accurate, the ones that are most genuine, are Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari. So we're going to take a look at Sahih Muslim because this specifically has some passages that we hear even today, and it's going to be important for us in understanding a little bit about Islam and Judaism. Let's take a look at a passage in Sahih Muslim. Sahih Muslim 29:22. Abu Huraira reported Allah's messenger as saying, Allah's messenger, by the way, is Muhammad, "The last hour means the end of the world, the last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, 'Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him.' But the tree Garqad would not say, for it is a tree of the Jews." So we have a hadith from a trusted source in Islam saying that Muslims will basically kill all of the Jews before the end of the world can happen. Sahih Muslim 4594 also states, "It has been narrated by Umar al-Khatib that he heard the messenger of Allah," again that's Muhammad, "say, 'I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslim.'" So, from Islam's most trusted sources, we have Muhammad saying that he's going to expel all the Christians and all the Jews from the Arabian Peninsula. Now, why is this important? Well, if Muhammad is the greatest prophet in Islam, and he is saying in one passage in the Hadith that the world won't end until all the Muslims kill the Jews, and in another passage, he is expelling Christians and Jews, meaning he has the power to actually do that if he doesn't like them, then how could that affect the way Muslims view Jews today? Now, that's a good question to ask, and the question is relevant because of what is happening today. A mistake that some people make is they view the issue between Israel and Hamas, or Israel and a lot of its Arab neighbors, as a land issue. And one of the big things is this: it's not so much a land issue as a religious issue. Notice that the Arab countries are majority Muslim. Notice that Israel, of course, is majority Jewish, Judaism being the main religion, obviously. That is the main issue at play here. It's Islam versus Judaism. You see from what we've read what the ultimate goal of Muslims is supposed to be, according to the most trusted hadith, Sahih Muslim. You also see what is said about Jews and Christians, but for today's video, we're focusing on Jews. What is said about Jews in the Quran, that they are the worst of creatures. The battle that we're seeing play out between the Arab countries and Israel is about religion, not about a tiny piece of land in the Middle East. And that's something that we need to keep in mind as we try to analyze what's going on. Now, as we continue on our time machine, what we need to know is that when Muhammad dies, he's conquered all of Arabia. Well, his followers are going to take the lead after him, and through a series of empires whose names we will not mention, they are going to conquer all the Middle East, including the land of Palestine, all of North Africa. They're actually going to conquer Portugal and Spain, and they're going to make it halfway into France before they're finally stopped. The Muslim empire is going to grow. Now, we don't need to know all the different empires that were Muslim, except for the last one, the Ottoman Empire. That's going to be very important for us to know. So the Ottoman Empire is going to rule the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Southeastern Europe from 1299 until 1922. Now, throughout all this time, you just have this land called Palestine, which was named that by the Romans, but there's no political body, there's no entity there. That land is just being passed down as part of one empire, and then part of another empire, and then part of another empire. Now, are there Jews living in that land? Yes. They can't form a political body and be a government, but there are Jews living in that land. There are also a lot of Arabs living in that land. Keep that in mind. Now, why do we need to know the Ottoman Empire? Well, because the Ottoman Empire is going to join the Central Powers in World War I. The Central Powers being Austro-Hungary and the German Empire. Well, if you know your history, you know what happens. In World War I, the Central Powers lose. Austria-Hungary's empire is destroyed and gone. The German Empire is also destroyed. And the Ottoman Empire is destroyed as well. The only thing left of the Ottoman Empire today is the country of Turkey. So why do we need to know that the Ottoman Empire was destroyed? Well, who takes over all that land that is controlled? Well, Britain and France are going to reach an agreement. It's called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And they are going to agree to divide up the Ottoman Empire among themselves. And Britain will rule the area of Palestine. Now, remember, there's still no government there. There are Jews living there. There are Arabs living there. There's more Arabs than Jews living there. But Britain now has control of that land. Now, you know that I told you that the Ottoman Empire ruled from 1299 until 1922. Well, before we go any further forward, let's jump in our time machine again. I'm pretty sure you're liking the references up in the corner. Let's go back a little bit to 1897. Okay? So, we know the Ottoman Empire ends in 1922. We're heading back to 1897. So in 1897, a Jewish man named Theodor Herzl actually begins the first meeting of the Zionist movement. And the Zionist movement, the goal of the Zionist movement is, hey, we want to have a country for Jews. We want to go back to our ancient homeland. So remember, we're talking about ancient Israel before the Romans destroyed it in 132 AD. Now, it isn't gaining a lot of support, but they do have annual meetings. And what's important for us to know is the reason why the Zionist movement has started. The Zionist movement has started because throughout the entire history since AD 70, the Jews have been scattered through the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. Now, throughout this entire history, they've been persecuted. They've been able to rest for a little bit of time, maybe a couple hundred years, but then something happens and basically people turn on the Jews, what we call anti-Semitism. So, we could talk about the massacres that happened under Muhammad in the Middle East. We could talk about their expulsion from Spain in the late 1400s. We could talk about the fact that when the Jews were still in Spain before being kicked out, in 1066, 5,000 Jews were massacred by Muslims in the city of Granada, Spain. We could talk about the fact that in 1465, in Morocco, which is in North Africa, in the city of Fez, thousands of Jews were massacred by Muslims there. We also have the Crusades. Now, the Crusades, those aren't Muslims, those are Europeans. They target and massacre Jews in different towns and villages in the Middle Ages. And we also have the Russian pogroms. Pogrom is a Russian word for attack. We have Russian attacks, Russian pogroms that take place in Russia in the late 1800s and in the early 1900s. All of that is to point out that Theodore Herzl's argument is that no matter where the Jews go, they keep on getting massacred, they keep on getting attacked for just being Jewish. So his thing is, the Jews need a country of their own. But as I said before, his movement isn't gaining a lot of steam. Yes, there are Jews who want to go back to their ancient homeland. But most Jews, even with all the massacres and stuff, they have roots built in North Africa, or they have roots in the Middle East, or they have roots in Europe. And so there isn't a huge push to leave all of that. Okay, jump in your time machine and let's move forward back to the end of World War I, which happened in 1917. So Britain now controls the land of Palestine. There are Jews living there and there are Arabs living there. The Arabs outnumber the Jews, but both groups are living in that area. Now, even though Zionism, founded by Theodore Herzl, isn't gaining a lot of steam, they do ask for Britain to consider putting a country there for Jews to go to. And in 1917, the British government issues the Balfour Declaration. And the Balfour Declaration pretty much says that the government is supportive of the idea of setting up a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Now, once Britain issues that Balfour Declaration, absolutely nothing happens. It's just a paper that's there, but there are a whole lot of other concerns that are going on, and Britain doesn't really do anything about that. We're going to fast forward to the 1930s. From about 1933 to 1936, the Arabs in Palestine are revolting against the British. They're fighting the British. They're also fighting and killing Jews as well. The British look at this and go, oh my goodness, there's no way that we can keep a hold of this region. This region is a powder keg. So we need a plan. So they put together a commission called the Peel Commission. And the Peel Commission comes up with a plan to create a two-country solution in Palestine. A place for the Jews to have a country and a place for the Arabs in Palestine, the Palestinian Arabs, to have a country. So the Peel Commission creates a map of this two-country solution, and it looks like this. So the 1937 Peel Commission map has the smallest section run by Britain. That's about 8% of Palestine. Britain's plan was to make that an international zone so that both Jews and Arab Muslims could be in that area. That would also include Jerusalem. The second smallest section, about 17% of Palestine, that goes to the Jews. And the large section, about 75% of Palestine, goes to the Arabs. The Jews debated about what they thought of the proposal, but their debates were pretty much mute because the Arabs rejected it straight out and said, no, we're not doing this. And so the Peel Commission's plan came to nothing. The Palestinian Arab rejection of the Peel Commission map happened in 1938. Now, let's jump in our time machine and just go a little bit forward to World War II. What happens in World War II will be the catalyst for creating the country of Israel. And of course, when I say what happened in World War II, I'm talking about the Holocaust. The Holocaust was one of the greatest tragedies in human history. 6 million Jews, along with others, were murdered by Nazi Germany. Now, why do I bring that up? Because the Holocaust is going to be the thing that makes Jews around the world look and go, we need a country of our own. If Germany, which was an intellectual powerhouse, very enlightened, if they could fall to anti-Semitism and actually perpetrate the worst anti-Semitism in the history of the Jewish people, then where could they be safe? In other words, they need a place that they can defend themselves and not have to rely on other people and their charity to defend them. So, with worldwide sympathy coming after the Holocaust, the United Nations puts together a two-country solution for the land of Palestine. A country for the Palestinian Arabs and a country for the Jews. And the map looks like this. Well, at the United Nations, all the Arab countries vote this map down, but the Jews vote to accept this map. And so on May 14th, 1948, the Jews declare their independence, and that section that was proposed for the Jews becomes the country of Israel. The very next day, May 15th, 1948, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq invade Israel with the goal of destroying the Jews and wiping out the country one day after it was created. Now for us, this is where our video stops. We will pick up in the next episode and find out what happens during the first Arab-Israeli war. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them politely and respectfully in the description box below. I'm Mr. McGee. Take care.